Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rap. It's long overdue, but he's back. Dan Cohen, the legend that smashed contact centers for Nespresso, award winner, and then took a huge leap of faith to run all of their logistics. A phenomenal task. And, of course, one of my favorite things that Dan has done. He I don't think about George Clooney or David Beckham for Nespresso adverts. I think of Dan and his modeling career as the man at the face of Nespresso coffee. He's been on the podcast before. He's a good friend of mine. I'm really glad he's back. Welcome, Dan.
Hey up, Martin. What a build-up that was. I'll send you the cash in the post. Don't believe anything you said, guys.
And I will have to share the movie poster that your colleagues did. I loved it.
Yeah. That's one of them regrets in life. That's been used at my expense quite a lot.
Now, so we've talked on when you first came on about contact centers, everything you've done. But you've gone through, since we did that episode, you've gone through a seismic change. What is it and when did it happen?
Yeah. So it was a couple of years ago now. I came on, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, an opportunity last August came up. So really, throughout my career, all I know is customer service and contact centers. And an opportunity arose for me to move into the world of supply chain. August last year, I've gained definitely a few more grey hairs, along with the horrendous Borat mustache. I will call out for anybody watching on YouTube. This isn't my normal look. This is for Movember. Donate. Can we do one of those tickers?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, moved into the world of supply chain. So warehouses, bringing product into the country, delivering them to your door or to boutiques, and yeah, loving the new challenge and the new change.
Well, great word. So change. When that when that opposite opportunity was presented to you and you knew the extent that that was going to be a change, how did that make you feel?
So look, I speak to some of my team about this. So for me, there's three certainties in life, right? Death, taxes, and KDB assists. They're the three things that are guaranteed to happen. The first one, and this is really, it's a little bit morbid, but I always say this to my team, and it's the reality of life. We're just on a road to death, right? And that is ultimately what happens while we're on this planet. And I'm a firm believer when opportunities arise, go for them and grab them. And I wasn't expecting the opportunity. And I remember the room I was in and the people I was with where the opportunity was presented. And I'd say it probably took me all of 15 minutes to say, let's do this. And I think even they were shocked and sort of said, do you want to go home? Do you want to speak to the wife, to the family? And I said, no, let's go for it. The wife absolutely thought I was insane when I got back and told her about it. Um, but we're here for a short time, right? And I'm a firm believer of feel the fear and dive in, and that's what I did, and I won't look back. And I know for sure if I hadn't taken the chance, I'd have regretted it. And life's too short for living with regret. So yeah, it was a lot of change, some fear, some unknowns, but we're here for a short time, as I say, and we might as well make it exciting along the way, right?
100% agree. And for those that don't know, and it pains me to say it, KDB assists is Kevin De Bruyne of Man City fame. Yeah.
It is guaranteed
Who
assists.
who Tottenham have on Saturday?
Could be a problem. Although they're not on great form. I don't know who I'm speaking about there, Spurs or Man
Well,
City,
you
maybe
can.
both.
It's a safe bet. We could say that about Spurs.
But yeah, I don't know if he's injured at the moment as well. KDB, is he?
I hope so.
Yeah.
So you've been doing the role. What's that then? A year and 3 months now.
Yeah.
Um, has the difference between contact center and supply chain, has that surprised you? Is it been more or less than you thought?
So yeah, I mean, look, the change is quite significant, but I think the starting point as well, and just going back to the question before, is we we're good in contact centers in terms of being the voice of the customer, but then also my experience, personal experience, is we can also always bemoan other departments as well and what they're doing and the consequence that they're having on us. But no changes if no does, right? So there's also a piece around go and get involved in other areas and take everything you've learned from the contact center and that voice of the customer, the customer experience, the outcome for the customer will never leave me. And ultimately, all departments are there to service the customer. So there are some huge differences and different ways of working, and even from elements around health and safety, what is possible as part of law and regulation is much more severe for the right reasons in the world of supply chain, where there is far greater risk of moving parts and consequences. So there's some of that, but then like when you strip it all back, a lot of what everybody does in some way is process, people, and technology. And one thing that you will also carry with you, apart from that voice of customer from a contact center world, is we know processes. By do we know processes? We know people. I love contact centers for the people, and there's some similarities in the world of supply chain in terms of the different levels, the broad spectrum of people you get working, in the industry, the massive cultures, etc. All of that stuff. And then the technology, maybe the technology isn't quite as sexy as some of the stuff in the contact center world these days, but there's still a wash of technology that you need to get your head around in supply chain world. So it is different. I think there is often a different type of person who works in there. My team is very different to the team I had in the contact center world. I'm super pleased that in my time at Nespresso in particular, I've managed to build two of the best teams ever. Very, very different. One in the contact center world, one in the supply chain world now. So yeah, differences, but then also similarities. And I hope what I've been able to bring is always putting that customer into what we do. So we've got all these processes which often can stop in a supply chain world at the end of a process, but I've kind of bolted on, okay, but what does that mean to the customer? And hopefully I'm now bringing the two departments a lot closer together and helping each other to understand, because it's not just one way. The contact center world would often bemoan something of the supply chain world, and I'd be included in that, right? I now understand that world far greater, and I can go back to my colleagues in the contact center and go, I know that this was really annoying, but because of X, Y, and Z, this is why we have to do it that way, and vice versa, right? In terms of some of the impacts. So yeah, I've been able to knit parts of it together, but I'm also learning a vast amount of new skills. I mean, some of the stuff I know, Martin, I won't bore this audience with, about check pallets and the rigidity of boxes and all these, the APR racking and all of this sort of stuff that I'm learning has been great, and I'm having to learn really, really quickly.
Well, we were speaking before hitting record about liking not knowing things and then going on and learning about them. If you think about this year and just over a year, the amount you've had to learn has probably been vast, right?
Yeah, but I've loved that. I've loved it. So and what I'll touch on, I'm just a lad from Leeds, right? I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. So anyone listening should challenge, should disagree, should have their own opinion of things. If you want a psychologist, I brought a plug with me actually. Danny Wareham's the man to go see for that sort of stuff. But it's a little bit cliche, but I've kind of loved being the stupidest person in the room. So it's the cliche of you never want to be the smartest person in the room, but for me personally, that could not be more true. I love going in a room and learning from the amazing colleagues we've got, the amazing partners we've got. It's invigorated me. It's engaged me massively. I love learning new things, and so for me personally, it's been fantastic, and it goes back, to those three guarantees in life, right? We're here for a short time. It's great to go and learn things, to know new things, to push yourself and see where you can go. So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
And you were talking earlier then about the teams, right? And that you've been lucky to have two great teams, two different skill sets, two different sets of experiences, and get into that point. There's something there I love about being you're the leader, or when you started, you were a leader of a team who, if you had your top trump card, would have had the lowest score for knowledge about the area you were leading. I imagine, unless you brought people over with you, everyone else in your team knew more than you about the area you were you were leading. And there's something special about that. There's something, it opens up a whole area for us to talk about of leadership, right? Because I can remember I used to say to my teams when I was leading contact center operations for an outsourcer, and some of my managers and team leaders would get hooked up on, if we brought on a new client that was offering a new service. um, I said you've got to find a way to think of it like this, which is whatever the service or product is, that's just a widget. What we know we're good at is the whole process, and then you just insert whatever the new thing is in there, and we'll learn about it, we'll find out about it, but don't get hooked up on it now. From what you've done though, it strips it back even more. So what you're dealing with is just pure leadership.
Yeah, but I also, and again, like I try and look at life through cup half full, right? So maybe a lot of people would be worried about that, but from a leadership point of view, it allowed me to be authentically vulnerable because I had no other choice, right? You can't BS people. They see through it. I was from within the business. I'd been in the previous area for 4.5 years ish. So people knew me, and I think that's an element that helped and is something that is an important skill in the leadership toolkit is that authenticity and but also the vulnerability, right? But then also doubling down on what is it you bring to the table, right? We're all a team, right? To keep on the football analogies, Trent Alex uh, Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think the worst name to try and get out there. Phenomenal passer of the ball, incredible. Are you going to play him at centre back? I doubt it, right? Unless you really, really have to. But he's part of an incredible team, and he plays his part. So it's about you understanding what you can bring to the table and some of the skills that I have, which are irrelevant to the knowledge of supply chain in terms of just a more broader leadership piece in terms of supporting people, stakeholder management, decision making, all this type of stuff that I could do, and getting to know my team really well and understanding the bits where they could play and where they could bring the most to the table, and being really honest and open with them, but not fearing that. Not feeling as though I've got some large amount of imposter syndrome. It's about embracing it, yeah, going with the change and remembering you're part of a team. Like nothing is done alone. Like we all work it. I mean, probably the worst person I've said that to, Martin, but you're part of a big community. But ultimately in enterprise business, we're part of teams, and we've got to play to one another's strengths. So I was just very clear on, guys, this is what I'm going to do. I'll play to my strengths that I can bring here. This is where I need you to play to your strengths. I'm going to commit to you that I'm going to get up to speed as quickly as possible, to learn, to ask stupid questions, all of that stuff. And equally at the same time, sometimes knowing nothing is the greatest superpower. So I've recently just completed my new look team, and I brought in an amazing lady called Michelle, who's got 25 years plus experience in supply chain. Loved her from like the first few minutes of interviewing her, and then she just went on to be better and better and better. And I recruited her for a role that often is not filled from outside, is potentially filled from inside. But I felt though she was the right person, and she came in not knowing anything about Nespresso, right, and the way we did things and the way we worked. And I remember constantly, and I still have this conversation with her at the moment. I said, your superpower is that at the moment, right? You don't know the way we do things, and you're sitting, you're observing, using your experience without any bias to what's gone before or what's been said before, and you're observing how we do things, how people interact, and that is your superpower. And at some point, that superpower will disappear, and one of your other superpowers will kick in. But sometimes the power of knowing nothing is actually one of the most important things when you arrive at a business. Asking the why do we do that, and hearing the fable, that's
Yeah.
the way we've always done it.
Oh, I love it. That utilizing new people is really important, often overlooked, but yeah, putting them to work and saying, tell us what you see. Ask the questions that you can do without worrying. I mean, you should never worry, but some people do. Um, when you're brand new in, you will unearth some really interesting stuff and conversation pieces. Now, you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, and I know through talking to you, you have some very interesting views on that, don't you?
Well, you set me up there. I don't know if it's interesting. And again, look, I caveat that these are just, the way I look at things, and I am no qualified psychologist or anything like that. But what I have noticed and what I've observed as a leader is imposter syndrome seems to just roll off the tongue of people now in so many situations, and often isn't really delved into any further, and has kind of just become common phrase amongst people now when they're in a situation which is new, or there's some change, or something's a little bit uncomfortable. And my not my worry, but my guidance to people in that situation is obviously to delve into it a little bit more, and understand where that's coming from. But I go back to some of the points I've made earlier in terms of not wanting to be the smartest person in the room, understanding that everyone has that superpower, be it you're brand new and you know nothing. And I just worry that people miss opportunity through something that potentially they don't necessarily understand, but have heard being discussed and have never really dived into it. And what is that feeling that you get? So not feeling worthy, feeling as though the bouncer's going to catch you in the club and throw you out because you shouldn't be there. But what I've learned is, confidence grows when you keep showing up, right? And there will be times when you feel uncomfortable. There will be times you don't understand what's happening around you. But I just worry, and I worry for maybe not that I'm an old man, right? I still a young fella, I think, just about. My kids would say opposite, but I worry more for younger people coming into work, and particularly with, and listen, I love LinkedIn, but when I go on LinkedIn, so many experts in the world, right? No shade on anyone, by the way, because there's absolutely some experts out there. In particular, if you're looking for an expert to guide your team leaders, the team leader community, an amazing place. I love the work I see from Neris out there. You know, there are some amazing people, but there are also these self-appointed experts, and I think sometimes people look at LinkedIn and assume that everybody is just an expert on things. And you know, I'm not an expert, and I think, you know, what I'd say is expert is loud, wisdom knows its limits, right? And so don't get too caught up in being down on yourself because you've got this lens of the world which is not real, which suggests that everybody's an expert. And look, you know, the greatest bit to be able to call out the BS is the overnight raft of people who are experts in AI, right? It's been around 2 minutes. I don't think the people who designed it fully understand it, and yet we're flooded with people who are experts and are going to transform contact centers. And again, no shade on everyone. Everyone's out there trying to make a buck, but I do worry that it gives this false impression to people. Whereas, you know, again, to be cliche, every day is a school day. You are not going to know everything. I don't think you ever become an expert. There's always something new. Things always change. And I just more want to try and encourage people to actually show up to the table, to try and overcome some of those worries and concerns, and bring their authentic self with them, and their ideas, right? Because they may be sat on amazing ideas which they don't bring forward. You know, Henry Ford famously, if I asked people what they wanted, they'd say faster horses. Got the cars now. Where would we be without the cars? And you know, I just worry that people sometimes will hide behind a label now because that's the easier way to go. Whereas I think we actually should be trying to use more positive language, to try and help people move into it, and also try to. I think it's incumbent on us as leaders to try and make sure that they don't look through that lens of LinkedIn or wherever and feel like they're inferior in any way, and make sure everyone is bringing the value to the business. That's my ramble. Not sure much of it.
I love it. And it you know, obviously it's a topic that's come up quite a bit in the team leader community, because like you, I think it's really important for not just in age, but in experience, maybe newer, younger leaders who are looking around. You know, I've had many questions around, have I had periods in my career where I've suffered from imposter syndrome? And like you, I think commonly known and used labels can be helpful and not helpful. They're helpful in opening the door to conversations and exploring what's really going on. They're unhelpful in that they can be used in an unwieldy way at times. Um, but you know, I've been able to say I can pinpoint the times in my career where the feelings and thoughts I had, you could say, would fit into that, a lot of the Venn diagram around imposter syndrome. But you made some really good points around, I kept showing up. You know, I think back to the time I was in Turkey, and I didn't think I should be chosen to go. I was surprised, but because someone saw something in me that I didn't see myself at the time. And then when I was out there, circumstance meant I rapidly gained more responsibility than I'd ever had in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language initially. Um, and I was navigating in circles of seniority that I'd never worked with on a daily basis before. And I felt, you know, there were times when I was terrified. I was thinking, God, I don't know what they know. I don't act like they do. I don't talk like they do. I don't have the experience that they do. But then through showing up, I thought, well, I don't need to mirror them or be a version of them. I need to address gaps where there are gaps that are needed for me to address. But actually, I've got a skill set that's very different to them, and I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to show my value, and I'm going to carry on asking silly questions, coming up with ideas, and doing the things that I knew I was okay at. And through getting through that, you then go, well, I've done it once. I can now do it again. Like, you can still get that feeling in the pit of your stomach where, yeah, you're right. You're looking over your shoulder because you feel like someone's going to throw you out and go, you're an imposter. Um, you can still feel that and go, well, I felt this before and I've done all right. And I've used it as a fuel to go and get better. I think the most important thing, like you said, don't let it affect your self worth, but also don't let it change you to the point where you're not being authentic, as you said, because everyone is different. Everyone brings something different. And yes, you can look at leaders and go, I like how they do that. I think I'll do a version of that. I don't like how they do that. I'm not going to do it. But you don't need to ape someone and go, I'm going to be like exactly like them.
Yeah, and look, it's all part of it's just evolution of we all do an element of changing throughout the years. I mean, look, if I look back to 18-year-old Dan, handful, nightmare, loosely would you even consider employable, right? If I think about my first team leader job at 23, 22 or something like that, probably an awful leader. I barely knew how to lead myself. An ops manager job at 25, probably way too young to get the role, but learning on the job, right? And, even if I look at 30-year-old Dan to where I am today, I think I've evolved, I've changed, I've got different views. I look at things through a different lens. Things happen in your life. I became a parent. That definitely gave me a different paradigm to look through. We had COVID. All of these things happen. So you evolve, but you have to be still true to yourself. Just trying to be a carbon copy of somebody else won't work. Nor do we want that in the world, right?
Mm.
Do we want a load of carbon copies? No, and that would stifle creativity and innovation, right? And that's listen, we've got AI for that. That can be a carbon copy of itself, non-stop regurgitating the same stuff over and over again. As humans, again, you've got to play to your strengths, right? It's our creativity, it's the way we think. But also being aware. That doesn't mean you can be authentically yourself, but not be appropriate with people or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? So there's
Mm.
there's limits to it, but it's just that self awareness. I think is a really important point, and I think being true to yourself and the journey you're on, and also understanding what it is you want to do. Right? It doesn't have to be the rat race of climbing the ladder, right? Because what ultimately are you in search of? What is it you're actually trying to achieve? And sometimes by stepping back and looking at that can give you a bit of clarity on what it is you want to do. Because maybe it isn't imposter syndrome, but maybe you're on the rat race trying to climb the ladder and you're in a room that you don't really want to be in, right? Because as humans, what do we generally want to do? We want to be happy, right? That's generally where we want to be. And on that, look, let's try and exercise. Let's try and exercise, right? So let me ask you a question, mine, which is unusual for the host on a podcast. What do you hate doing?
What do I hate doing? Admin and sales.
And what would make you happy?
Good question. Very good question. It's hard to narrow it down. I tell you what does make me happy. I mentioned it to you before we came on today. I got some great feedback about how people in a we've got a company that's come into the team leader community, and they put 15 team leaders in on a 3-month trial, and today was the review session of that, and the feedback was amazing. And it's the happiness, I guess, is rooted in knowing the idea that I had and the work that I've put in putting the community together has done what I wanted it to do, and it's helped people. You know, that as part of this review, I didn't ask for feedback. I just said, "Look, we've got some feedback for you. Taking the time to write it out. Here it is," and it was brilliant. So I think that job well done and helping people.
And look, firstly, I love that because you know there's so many people cheering you on from the sidelines, and credit well deserved. So go Martin, and people need to join up to the team leader community. But the point of the exercise was look how quick it was for you to tell me the things that you hate. Admin and sales, boom, done. Like I know what I really dislike doing. Whereas this sort of attaining happiness for humans is a little bit more of a difficult task because what truly is going to make us happy. And I you know, with a lot of my team, I often use the mountain analogy, right? And this kind of sums humans up. We're brilliant at this. So I want to go and climb up that mountain because the view at the top is going to be absolutely amazing. And we go through the arduous journey of getting up to this mountain, and we get to the summit. We take a picture for the gram, and we go, right, that was great. And then we back down. Where's the next mountain, right? So at the top of that mountain, we thought there was this piece of happiness. We take a picture for the gram, we take it in, we have a sandwich, right? And so sometimes by looking through the lens of just trying to find happiness can be quite difficult. But what we're all good at is looking at those things that we really don't like, right? And so sometimes when you do the exercise of where it is you want to go, sometimes start with those things that you hate doing, right? Because if you didn't have to do admin and sales, and I'm not saying life is this easy, you're still going to need to do admin and sales, Martin. But do you think there'd be a little bit more happiness in what you could do and you'd focus on other things with that time?
It's a great question, and actually, and I didn't do philosophy, but I know this. I know this experiment. Okay, there was an experiment where it's theoretical, but they said there's a tank. Okay, in this tank, you will be hooked up and immersed in it, and we will program the perfect life for you, whatever you want. You can fly, you could be a secret agent, you could be rich, you could, and you will never ever suffer anything go wrong ever. Life will be perfect. And the psychologist that did the experiment found that once they actually started discussing with people about this and got them to think about it, of every, let's say they had 100 test subjects, not one said that they would go in the tank because that's not life.
Mistakes make the journey. Mistakes make the
Exactly.
journey. And again, you know, I go back to that point at the very beginning, and I know it's super morbid and nobody wants to talk about it, but it is ultimately a journey at some point, hopefully way in the future. Hopefully we can get to, you know, well over 100, Martin, and enjoy every bit of life. But you know, it's a real short time, and we're just we're not even a blip in the world, right? And another bit that you know for arts people is you don't even stay long in the, I know again this is quite sad, but you don't stay long in the memory, right? So if I think of whoever my great granddad was, you know, I don't know that person. I don't know what gaffes they made at work. I don't know what they were like as a person. You kind of lose it. And even the most famous people in the world, right? Pele, widely regarded as one of the greatest footballers of all time. I remember when he died and the quite right emotion that came out, and stadiums were going to be renamed, and you know, the World Cup should be called the Pele Cup, you know, all this outpouring lasted a month and then people moved on and, you know, people barely mention Pele anymore, right? So it's also important not to get too caught up in um, the you know the worries and stuff of what you're doing. You just got to embrace everything because we're here for such a short amount of time. It's not going to live particularly long in the memory. So that's why I just encourage everyone to get out there, embrace challenge, and particularly for the contact center world, which I have such a strong affinity and care with, and have worked with some of the best people of my career in. go and be the change, right? It's important that everybody gets out there and takes that voice of the customer and takes a different perspective into other departments. I can't encourage it enough.
Well, we still claim you as our own, but we look upon you now as like our champion going out there and going, look, look at him. Look at what he's doing in supply chain. I love it. But your message is spot on. It's a great place to draw this episode to a close. Is a reminder that just talking to you now and knowing you, I'm not surprised at it. Well, I am surprised it took you 15 minutes because I imagine it was an instant yes for the role because this is the person you are, and it's a great message to share with people to go for that challenge, embrace the change because you're right, life is short, and stop putting off things that would make it more fulfilling, let's say.
Absolutely. And I want to give one more shout out potentially to anyone who's listening out there because and you know this as well, Martin. It's tough in business and it's tough in the contact center world. And again, I go back to this point of there's a lot of narrative and people who want to point out the shortcomings of business, particularly in customer service and CX world. But I've not worked anywhere where people aren't trying their absolute utmost to do the right thing and to get the best possible outcomes. And I think everyone needs to take a moment to give themselves a pat on the back and applaud themselves. Of course, there's more work to do, but I can also say from the outside in, it's easy to point out the faults. But as you know, working in business, as Tyson would say, right? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. When you're working in business, you get punched in the face a lot, and plans have to change, and you have to move with it. And yeah, I think it's just important that we also spread a bit of positivity about what a lot of business. I'm not saying all, and I know there's tons of work to do, but I've not worked anywhere where everyone isn't trying to do their absolute utmost to be better every single day, and it's hard, but yeah, also keep going.
Love it. Dan Cohen, legend now across two worlds. Thanks for coming on. I think the Tash is awesome, by the way. We will share the link so you can give to Dan's Movember. It's a great cause. He's looking absolutely retro funk.
It's like a BTEC Borat.
Yeah. The Leeds version.
The Leeds version, yeah.
Mate, thanks so much for coming on. I wish you all the best apart from this Saturday at 5:30.
Thank
You,
you.
buddy.